All right, so you've done it. You've modernized your infrastructure using GitOps, you're managing everything through code, and you've automated your VMware Cloud Foundation, or VCF, provisioning. And that is a huge win, for sure. But what happens, the day after deployment? That's where the real work, the hard work, actually begins. Today we're going to dive into that missing piece that really defines a mature cloud platform, full lifecycle governance.
It's a tempting thought, isn't it? The blueprint runs, the virtual machine pops up, and it totally feels like a victory. But this is exactly where a really dangerous operational gap starts to open up. Look, if your automation journey ends with provisioning, you've only solved the first part of the problem. And let's be honest, it's probably the easiest part. So what happens next week, next month, or a year from now?
We call this the provisioning plateau. It's that feeling you get when you've reached a peak of efficiency for all your day one tasks. But then you look out and you see this long, complex, kind of messy landscape of day two operations stretching out in front of you. This is where all that initial speed and consistency you work so hard for can start to fall apart as manual patches and one-off config changes and little policy exceptions start to pile up.
Just look at the contrast here. On the left, you've got all those day one victories. Fast, repeatable VM creation. Awesome. But the right side, that's the storm of day two questions. Is your configuration slowly drifting away from that golden state? Did that emergency patch somebody pushed last week open up a port that totally violates your security policy? Are those policies even consistent across your entire environment? Without a real strategy, these questions lead right back to where you started: manual work and inconsistency.
And the fallout from this gap isn't just theoretical. The source material puts it perfectly. This critical gap often leads to manual toil, inconsistent configurations, and delays in application readiness. That manual work starts creeping back in, you start getting these snowflake servers that are all slightly different, and security gaps appear. And the bottom line? The applications your business relies on get delayed because the platform just isn't truly stable.
So how do we bridge this gap? Well, this is where Red Hat Ansible comes into the picture. But here's a really crucial detail. You have to stop thinking of it as just another automation tool. You need to frame it as the governance layer for your entire VCF environment. It's the mechanism that enforces your rules long after that initial deployment is a distant memory.
Let's be super clear about what we mean by governance. This is not just about running scripts. It's about using automation to define a desired state, a single source of truth for how every single component should be configured, and then constantly, automatically enforcing that standard. It validates compliance, and it makes sure your operations are identical every single time.
Okay, so why is Ansible the right tool for this job inside VCF? Well, first off, it's agentless, which is a huge win for simplifying management. It fits perfectly into a GitOps model, where your desired state lives in source control. It also works across the entire stack, from the infrastructure to the OS, all the way up to the apps running on top. And here's the magic word. It's idempotent. That means you can run a playbook 100 times, and it's smart enough to only make changes if the system has drifted from that desired state. It's designed to enforce consistency.
All right, so the theory is solid. But how do you actually connect these two incredibly powerful platforms? Let's take a look at the high-level blueprint. Don't worry, we're focusing on the logic of the workflow here, not a bunch of code.
When you boil it all down, the integration is actually pretty simple and, well, kind of elegant. A process kicks off in VCF automation. Let's say it's a VM deployment. This triggers a workflow in vRealize Orchestrator, or VRO. Then, that VRO workflow makes a secure API call over to Ansible Tower, which is the enterprise framework for Ansible, telling it to run a very specific playbook. See, it's a seamless, automated chain reaction. If we break that down, the whole process is basically a four-step dance. First, you configure your external orchestrator, that's VRO, to talk to your VCF environment. Second, you build a simple workflow in VRO that knows how to make that API call to Ansible Tower. Third, you expose that workflow inside VCF automation, maybe as a post-provisioning step. And then the final and most critical step of all, you lock it all down. Seriously.
And that last step is so critical, it absolutely deserves its own section. When you connect systems this powerful, you're not just building a road, you're building an automation superhighway. And you'd better believe you need some serious guardrails, toll booths, and speed limits to keep everything safe and under control.
Your security model really needs to rest on these four pillars. Least privilege access. This is non-negotiable. The automation gets the bare minimum permissions it needs to do its job and nothing more. Role separation. The people building workflows shouldn't be the same people approving them. Secure secret management. No hard-coded passwords anywhere, ever. And finally, full audit traceability. You need a crystal clear log of who did what, when, and why.
So how do you actually do least privilege? A great way is with something called scoped service accounts. Instead of some God mode admin account, the automation uses a dedicated account that can only do one specific thing, like run a patching playbook inside a specific tenant's project in Ansible Tower. This is huge because it contains the blast radius if anything ever goes wrong.
All right, let's get practical. Here are some actionable best practices. For your inventory, isolate different tenants into their own separate projects in Ansible. For security, please avoid shared tokens. Use dedicated service accounts or something like OAuth instead. You have to enable detailed logging on both sides for your audit trail. And for resilience, build some retry logic into your VRO workflows. That way, a tiny network blip doesn't kill your entire automation.
So after all this work, connecting the systems, defining the playbooks, securing the whole process, what's the actual payoff? What do you get? The payoff is huge. It's moving from a reactive, inconsistent, firefighting kind of operational model to one of true, full lifecycle maturity.
And I mean, just look at the difference here. It's night and day. In a provisioning-only world, the risk of configuration drift is super high, and auditing is a manual nightmare, right? You're scrambling for days before every compliance check. With lifecycle governance, you dramatically lower that risk. Auditing becomes as simple as checking some locks. Your security posture is hardened and enforced automatically, and your operations become standardized no matter who happens to be on call that night.
This quote really just nails it. This integration transforms VCF into a truly holistic cloud platform, eliminating manual day two efforts. You're no longer just managing infrastructure, you're operating a complete platform. You are systematically, methodically eliminating all those error-prone manual tasks of day two, and what you're left with is a robust, secure, and self-managing private cloud.
And this brings us to what is maybe the most important point of all. This isn't just about making today's operations a little bit more efficient. It's about laying the groundwork for everything that's coming next.
The real goal here, the real prize, is stability and predictability. When you have a platform that automatically heals itself, that enforces its own compliance, and that operates consistently at scale, you have finally created a foundation that you can build on with total confidence. You've built a platform that's ready for those demanding next-generation workloads.
Which leads us to the final really important question. Think about what's coming down the pipe. I'm talking about things like enterprise-scale AI. Those kinds of workloads demand an incredible level of stability, security, and predictability from the platform underneath. Just provisioning the infrastructure is not going to be enough. So as you look to the future, the question to ask your team isn't just, is our deployment automated? The real question is our entire lifecycle governed? Because that is what will determine if your infrastructure is truly ready for what's next.